So I had a couple of the Sound Dog guys over today helping me with my build a little bit, and you know, one of the things that we've been talking about, on and off and stuff, has been, fighting records and high level guys and everything. And one of the important things that you need to understand is that, like, uh, any given fight doesn't really mean a lot, and honestly any given fighter doesn't necessarily mean a whole lot, right? Sometimes success is in spite of your training, not because of it. Some people just they've developed, or innately or both, have a knack for the timing, the rhythm, picking the right shots. You watch most of what wins fights, and it's mostly what we would consider slop or bad technique, right? And that doesn't mean that you shouldn't train good technique if you can define that in the first place, which I think you can, kind of, based on efficiencies and stuff, but obviously leaving room for personal individuality and all that. But the other interesting thing to think about is that the fight record itself doesn't mean a whole lot, right? Any given fight is the matchup between those two people on that given day, and all of the circumstances that led them there. You don't know what the next day is going to bring. You don't know what what it would have looked like tomorrow. You don't know what it would have looked like yesterday. And that's not to say that fight records are useless, right? But what I'm more impressed with is fight finishes. Then I don't care about points. I've never cared about points. I think decisions are draws. I care about finishes. And on top of that, and look, if you nix decisions out of fighters' records, that paints a different picture than what the total record with the current point scoring systems are. But aside from that, like I said, every fight is kind of individual. So when you're looking at something like that, you got to think that, what does a fight record mean, right? It means a guy was dominant against certain fighters on certain days under certain conditions, right? Those things will, from a physics and entropy level, will absolutely never repeat. To what degree that matters is minor, but the fact is that they're singular events. And I very frequently bring up the Ronda Rousey, Miesha Tate, Holly Holm thing, because this was a big deal, right? Ronda Rousey was going undefeated. Miesha Tate, went for a few times and couldn't beat her. Holly Holm then comes in behind her, beats Ronda. Then Miesha Tate beats Holly Holm. Does that mean that Miesha de facto beat Ronda? No, it really doesn't. The skill set matchups are different, and the way that they fight, the way they strategize and everything and think are different. Miesha Tate versus Holly Holm was a better matchup than Miesha Tate versus Ronda Rousey was. That's all that tells us. So where a fight record does matter, and this is interesting to think about, where a fight record really does matter is where you're dealing with something like, over a time span, how many people has this person fight, and how many wins has this person racked up? And again, like I said, I care about definitive wins. How many wins has this person racked up? I want to see their percentage of wins versus their percentage of fights. Because what that tells me, because if I know that every fight is individual, what that tells me is that they have gone up against multiple people and won in multiple conditions, because they're all separate conditions, and that paints a better picture, right? And this is one of the big reasons why you want fights to be very close matchups, with records being very close, with training years and everything being relatively close, having the fighters on as even footing as possible, because that's going to paint a better picture, right? If somebody less experienced goes up against somebody more experienced, don't be surprised, when the more experienced guy wins. And yes, it's cool to see the less experienced guy win, and that might show a knack or something, right? But not necessarily. And so we want to see this over the long haul. And so for me, a bigger record with more definitive wins matters more than like where they are in the rankings. I don't care if somebody's an elite level guy at the top of the game. It just means that, you know, he got a good draw of opponents for his matchup all the way up there. That's not what I care about. What I care about is how many fights versus how many wins. That ratio is more important than specifically who he's fought. Again, short of him like fighting tomato cans, right? Provided he's not fighting fixed fights and providing he's not fighting tomato cans, then, you know, assuming that they're reasonably even matchups, number of fights, number of wins tells you a whole lot more than specifically who he's fought and where that other guy was ranked and blah, 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 like that. And if rankings were done more along those lines, they would be more trustworthy. But as they stand now, man, stuff is so hand-picked and hand-selected, it's hard to trust rankings. So I don't know, I think it's time to reframe how we think about fighters' records and how we rank and consider fighters' capabilities. Because honestly, like, just because you fought the world champion doesn't necessarily mean a lot. You know, sometimes a good matchup is a good matchup and it just works out in your favor. That's not what's important, right? A single fight doesn't tell you much. What I want to see is the trend line over time. All right, I'm done rambling. I'll talk to you guys later. Good journey. Thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, share. Check us out on our other socials, and please head over to blacksunboxing.com to get a little more info, including how to contact us. Furthermore, if you are in the Phoenix area, please feel free to stop in, say hi, join in for a class, whatever. Also, if you ever see us cite sources or just for additional content, please check out our Substack. That is where we put all of the sources we use in our videos and is a major part of this. Plus, it serves as a membership platform for long distance learning and for people who would like to support us but aren't local. We would greatly appreciate it if you signed up. Even just the free membership helps us out a lot. All right, I will see you guys in the next video. Good journey.